Welcome to Movies, Films, and Flicks. I am Mark Hoffmeyer, and joining me is a man who is pure at heart and says his prayers at night, but still he may become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the autumn moon is bright. It's David Cross.
Oh, man. I'm excited to talk about this movie.
I saw this film in 2010, directed by Joe Johnston, the Wolfman, starring Benicio del Toro, Emily Blunt, Hugo and Anthony Hopkins, and I saw the theatrical cut, and I watched it with my wife and John Lazavath, who was the host on this show for the first probably 100 episodes. And when we walked out of that 100 minutes, I mean less with the credits, I felt like I had stepped out of a fever dream. I stepped out of a gothic fever dream fueled by Red Bull. All I remember is watch this movie. I just remembered the visuals, and it's really stuck with me for the last 10 years. Anthony Hopkins throwing that chair up in the air. John Lazavath and I had made a big joke about that. But just some of the visuals and I called it very sumptuous. The lighting, the costumes, the Oscar-winning makeup done by Rick Baker. But then I kind of thought about it. But then I try to discuss the plot, and it feels like it's all a dream to me. I know it's very linear. It takes place over 4 full moons. But it's hard to explain this movie, right? It feels like the less of something that was made, but I still love it.
I think you hit the nail on the head with your metaphor, the gothic fever dream fueled by Red Bull. Because that's exactly what this is. Because we were chatting online, and I was like, I feel like this is 2 separate movies that were smacked together. It's Underworld and then Crimson Peaks. Just like, smack them together, and this is what you get.
Wow,
it's like it feels like the writer probably wanted to create this moody, atmospheric thing, and the studio's like, Underworld's great, let's have some action, and that'll sell. And it comes together in this strange amalgamation where individually both parts are fun, but sometimes they don't work together.
I mean, it jumps all over the place, but also the more you learn about the history of this, Mark Romanek was supposed to direct it, of 1 Hour Photo, that movie that's really dark and ominous. He was supposed to direct it. He wanted 20 more days. They wouldn't give him 20 more days, so then they brought in Joe Johnston, who's just a consummate pro. I mean, the guy had worked on Rocketeer, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Hidalgo, October Sky. After this, he went on to Captain America, The First Avenger. So they brought him in 3 weeks beforehand. Now, a little history. When he took over for Stuart Gordon for Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, they gave him an extra 8 weeks of pre-pro. This one, they just said, get in there. And to his credit, I found an interview where Anthony Hopkins said this poor chap had no time to prep, but he's kept the boat steady, and he's been calm, and he's kept it going. And Anthony Hopkins said that he's one of the best directors he's worked with in a long time. And that's high praise from Anthony Hopkins, just that he could step in there with 3 weeks and make it happen. But the problem is they had to go back for mass reshoots because they cut a lot of stuff out of the script. But then when they saw the final cut, they went, crap, that expensive stuff that we needed, that we cut out of the script, we need. So then they put more money into it, and then this ended up costing $150 million. And this movie, it came close to that internationally, which is pretty excellent for an R-rated Wolfman film. You have a director coming in with 3 weeks of pre-pro, mass reshoots, a lot of studio notes. You have just all these things combined, and despite all that, I still think Joe Johnston steered this in a visually interesting place, where I think a less interesting film with less pro actors would fall apart. But for this one, it's well worth the watch. I mean, I've watched this movie probably 10, 12 times. I don't remember it after watching it for some reason because it's such a fever dream. I'm like sweaty after watching it. But a lot of visuals stick in my memory, and we forget so much in this film. But I love the head lops off. Emily Blunt at the end when she's hiding by the tree. The chair throw from Hopkins when he's calling everyone idiots inside the sanitarium. The mental hospital. I don't know, for some reason it sticks out. So I pitched this movie to you. What did you think about what were your first thoughts watching this thing?
Yeah. So before I get to that, I'll just give you like a quick my relationship to this film. So I had never seen it before you pitched this to me. Like I had always meant to, and I never got around to it when it first came out. I was like, this is a movie I should love because I'm a big fan of the Universal Horror Monsters. In fact, I have the Guide to Universal Horror Movies on my desk as we speak. I have a ton of their action figures. When I was little, I used to have a club with my friends, the Monster Club, and we all were monsters in it. I was very little.
Oh, that's cool.
So this is like a movie that's right up my alley, and I was like, I just never got around to it. I don't know why. And so you pitched it to me, and I was like, you know what? Finally, let's do this. And my first impressions of the film is is really like I like it, but I don't know what I watched. Like your description of a fever dream is perfect, basically because I watched it 2 days ago. I gave it my full undivided attention, and I still can't remember some of the things that happened. You're absolutely right.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah. And I had to go back for this podcast and scrub through the video just so I could remember scenes and write down scenes. And that so rarely happens to me because usually when I watch a movie, I am on it. I know what's happening, but not this film.
I found a way to really figure this movie out, and it's basically a tale of 4 action scenes. So you have the gypsy camp where the initial violence kicks off. And then you have Del Toro versus the hunters in the pit. Then you have the London massacre, and then you have the werewolf brawl. So if you can separate those 4 things into it, that's the easiest way for me to get into this film, because once he turns into a werewolf and he goes to the insane asylum or whatever it is, that's when this movie just goes on light speed. And it's it's hard to look. I love it. I do. I love this movie. And the 2-hour director's cut, you know what's wild is this is one of the rare times where the theatrical cut's 1 hour and 42 minutes. The director's cut is about 2 hours. But both of them, when I watch them, I still go, I don't remember much. And I'm not being sassy here. I'm not being like pithy because I love this movie. I'm not being that guy. Oh, I don't remember. I legit I'm like, what happened?
Let's dissect that, Mark, because in all honesty, not a lot happens, right?
No. 4 action scenes, pretty much.
Yeah, he shows up. His brother's dead. He gets bitten. He kills some people. He goes to London. He fights in London. like he comes back. There's a fight. It's over. It's like everything is really long and drawn out, and yeah, it's a thin plot.
Very thin. The original had more life to it. I mean, you had Lon Chaney coming back. He gets which in the director's cut, he gets the cane, which we never see again, the silver wolf cane. He kills Bela Lugosi. Then he has a thing with the antiques dealer, Gwen. And then he kills a grave digger. And then at the end, his dad smushes him, his head. His dad kills him. So I guess there's more of a story there. This one's just Del Toro gets bit. Then he kills some people, then he goes to a sanitarium, then he kills his dad.
They try to combine elements, I believe, of Werewolf in London, the original that came out before the original, The Wolfman. Like, I think it was 36 or 35, 1936 or 35 was that movie. So The Wolfman has both those elements. It's like a sort of a combo of both of them.
But it looks so good.
It does. It does look really, really, really good. So speaking of us having a hard time remembering stuff, do you want to talk about our 5 favorite scenes to jog our memories?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So 5 favorite scenes. Are we talking about anything from the film that we remember?
Anything that you like about the movie, the film? Because I was just struggling with it.
I mean, it looks beautiful with the discussion between Gwen and Benicio del Toro or Larry by that waterfall. I think that's all green screen, blue screen, but it looks beautiful. And the scene at the end when he's on top of her, I mean, Emily Blunt I think she's really good in this movie. She pulls off every line that she has, and I really dig it. Okay, and then also the chair throw by Anthony Hopkins, where he starts turning into a werewolf, and he just throws a 50-pound chair like it's like a fun noodle in the air, like it's absolutely nothing. I do love the cheeky gag where the guy tries to get stuck in a bog, tries to shoot himself, and gets his head lopped off.
That's right.
And man, what else do I remember in this movie?
Yeah, I mean, I can go through mine if you want to think about it.
Yeah, let's hear it.
All right, so the number 5 is the gothic vibe. We've talked about this a couple times, but it looks really, really good, and it lends this creepy atmosphere to it that sometimes doesn't quite work with the action, but I really appreciate it. So there's also Sir John punking the whole town, telling them his servants on the roof. I thought that was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the creepiest scene for me, and I think you mentioned this, was the montage when Lawrence was in the sanitarium, and you had the statue look at him and it turned into his mother and then the blood across the throat. That entire fast forward scene was really, really cool and strange.
Oh, yeah.
Then I guess this is number 2, is Sir John's delivery of "You've done terrible things."
Yeah.
It's so good. I remember that being in the trailer and I was like, oh, this is great.
He's like, good luck, kid.
Yeah. And then this is MMF mainstay number 1. I know this is so funny. So during that final fight scene with the Wolfman fight scene, gravity doesn't matter. Let's just be honest.
None.
They do this crazy spin, like Sir John just basically smacks Lawrence, and he does this like cannonball spin across the room. And all I could think of when I watched that was Blanca from Street Fighter, and I was like, oh, this is great.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, I see that now. That's fun.
Yeah. Honorable mention, and I'm sure we will mention this too. Hugo Weaving. So I didn't know he was in this film. I only knew it was John Hopkins and Benicio Toro, and when he showed up, I lost my mind because I love Hugo Weaving.
Yeah, and then he reunited with Joe Johnston for Captain America: The First Avenger, which makes me happy. But I mean, and also during the final fight. So I also started another podcast called Final Fights, and this is the 5th one I've looked at where people just straight up run at each other. So Incredible Hulk, Blade 2, let's see, what else is there? Count of Monte Cristo. In Final Fights, it's such a trope where the two just run at each other. But I like this one. 2 fuzzy werewolves charging each other. And I love that Anthony Hopkins does a shirt rip in this so you can tell which one is who in the fight, which they do a good job of, which makes me happy. But yeah. I mean, that final fight, though, there are some really neat shots. And the flips are weird. The climb on the wall like he's some sort of vampire. They destroy the piano, a couple couches. But there's a part where Del Toro's werewolf scratches the back of Hopkins, like scratches Hopkins' back and just gashes go through. So there's enough there to really make it work. And then it ends up with Anthony Hopkins on fire and then just getting his head lopped off like it's nothing. Oh, man.
Yeah. I wrote down while watching that fight scene was, when did wolves become cats? because they are incredibly agile. When I think of the Wolfman, I don't think of them being agile. I think of them as more being brooding and vicious. And that was one thing I would have liked to seen more of, like the back scratches and the claw scratches, not acrobatics.
Well, that's what the fight originally was, and they went back and refilmed it with more jumping. Okay. So they needed the hops. They needed the jumps.
They needed the hops. Absolutely.
Now, I do want to say, during the initial attack at the camp where the gypsies were at, for lack of a better term, that's just what they're called. They call them worse things than that in the movie. But so when John attacks his initial attack, he kills a guy in the middle of the crowd. His first kill is someone in the crowd. So that means there's hundreds of people. He runs in, does a run-by scratching on a gypsy guy, and then gets out of there before anybody can see him, and then he dies.
Yeah, that's a really strange scene because you still don't quite know what's going on. I should mention I'm going to call them the Romani.
The Romani.
I'm going to call them the Romani because I did some research, and apparently gypsy is a negative term, a slur, which I didn't know about until recently. So I'm going to do my best to say Romani.
And don't call them pikeys like they did in Snatch. That's terrible too.
Yeah. All right. But yeah, the Romani in that scene, I wished it was a little slower. And I also wish the CGI on the bear was different.
Yeah.
That bear's weird looking.
Yeah. It's a funky bear. But I guess this is another world. So maybe bears look like that in this world.
Yeah. I read somewhere that was a reuse of something from the Golden Compass, I believe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was a recycled animation from the Golden Compass that they just slightly changed.
Well, you got to save money.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing about this film. Like, the director came in and he, forgiving all the constraints, he really did hit it out of the park. I mean, the one thing I really wished would have had is like less CGI. But then reading about this film, he was like, I had to do the CGI in order to get the movie done on time.